Welcome, everyone, to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Issues and Updates for September 24, 2024. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please take the roll?
Yes, Chair Smith. Commissioners West and Schrader are out of the office today. There is a quorum present. Commissioner Savas?
Present.
Commissioner Shull?
Here.
Chair Smith?
Here.
Thank you. I'm going to change the order of the list today because we have an elected official present. We're going to start with the regular board issues list, deflection plan update. District Attorney John Wentworth will give you an update on how things are going so far since this program began on September 1st. Welcome, District Attorney.
Welcome. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm District Attorney John Wentworth, and I've asked Deputy District Attorney Bill Stewart to join me today. As I've mentioned to the Commission before, DDA Stewart is leading our effort on deflection. He's the subject matter expert. I'm probably number 2 in that, so if there's a very detailed question you have, Bill will be able to answer it better than I can. What I wanted to do is just have Bill describe for you kind of where we are. This effort began September 1, and I wanted to have Bill kind of share where we are statistically with deflection, and then we can answer more detailed questions.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much. I believe you have a copy of a spreadsheet that, yes. So this is a recap. We're approximately 20-some days into this process. We've had a significant number of cases submitted to our office or participants for this. And so we've actually identified a total of 28 of the possession of controlled substance U charges that qualify under House Bill 4002. Those would have been violations under the law predating September 1. So of those, we've actually offered deflection in 7 cases, and we've offered conditional discharge in 13 of those cases. The distinction is deflection is a pre-charge diversion, so there's no case that exists if they accept the deflection offer. The conditional discharge is a post-charge diversion, more like a Dewey diversion, where the case is charged, they have to agree to terms of probation, and if they're successful, the case gets dismissed. We've had some charges that we've not filed or have not qualified for either deflection or conditional discharge. I've listed those on the sheet. We've done a demographic breakdown in part to give you some sense of what we're seeing so far. This comes right off the police reports that we're identifying. I would note that so far a significant number of the population has actually been arrested. In many cases, that's because they might have a pending warrant for a completely separate case. There might be other charges, or the law enforcement partners have made a determination that from a public safety standpoint, that individual should be arrested at that point. But I will say this from a broader sense, these numbers are more than I thought we would get this early. There is certainly an appetite in our law enforcement partners to identify and try to help these folks. I suspect that we're going to see greater numbers moving forward. John asked me also to touch on potential roadblocks we're running into. I think we shared with you that we had hoped to bring on board a program navigator that would kind of be my counterpart in working with our outreach teams and with our burn treatment providers. We're having trouble hiring that person. We're working on some solutions around that. I'm kind of filling both roles so far. And we've got our burn partners are excited to work with us both in terms of providing peer support as well as treatment. So we're working to connect everyone, both those folks who are getting a deflection offer as well as the conditional discharge offer. So we're building that capacity as we go forward. So that's all I have unless you have any questions of me.
Let's go back to the difficulty in hiring a navigator. Is it because of the job description? Is it because there's nobody out there that fits the job description? Does this person need training in the Clackamas system? So what is it?
I think the challenge is, that we had a delay in that process because of the challenge we faced with the Impacts Grant Review Committee about initially getting our proposal accepted. That took about 2.5 to 3 weeks. So we got a little bit of a late start. I think it's a function of the job market. And of course, the position we're hiring for is a temporary one. The money only goes through June 30th of 2024. 25. That said, we have an alternative strategy that we're going to try to put together the next day or two, which I think should bring somebody on board, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. So we're going to fix that problem. It's just that it's been a little more of a challenge I didn't anticipate at
A
this point.
temporary position would be tough for somebody at this skill level, I'm saying. You almost have to bring somebody over from another department or within-house to do this, and then that leaves a hole over here. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Commissioner Scholl.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so on deflection, somebody who is, qualifies for deflection, do we have an inpatient option for them to go through rehab? Is that part, in other words, is that an option to that person?
Short answer is yes.
Okay.
The more detailed answer is going to be that depends on the evaluation. For somebody who's been offered deflection, we'll do initial assessment to get a sense of needs. We'll connect them with a treatment professional who do a formal drug substance abuse evaluation. That evaluation will determine whether that person needs inpatient or outpatient. So we haven't gotten there yet with our folks, but I think your other question is there going to be space available for that? We don't know that yet. We're going to have to work through that process.
Okay, so maybe not in Clackamas County, but in the region, space for inpatient drug rehab, that's something that you could consider using, correct?
Definitely.
Okay, and so after this assessment is done on the person who's referred to deflection, what guarantee, probably we don't have a guarantee, but what assurance does the society have that that person is going to come out after this deflection process and is going to be drug-free? Is that something we can hope for?
Certainly can hope for that.
Okay.
We don't have a guarantee of that. I will say this, deflection in Clackamas County is a one-time opportunity. If they come out and reoffend, we're going to continue to pursue that case, that new case, and push treatment again.
Okay, so there's a great deal of personal responsibility required for the person who goes into deflection.
Yes.
Okay, and one more question, please. On the conditional discharge, again, what process is that person monitored to ensure that their responsibility level and getting themselves free of recurrence for drug use is done?
So for both deflection and conditional discharge, the candidates will sign a release of information that will allow the treatment program that we connect with to share that information to us. Excuse me. And so we'll get feedback for them. For them to get that case dismissed, they have to show what's called a substantial engagement, move a long way through the process, not necessarily complete it, but they've got to connect with these folks, follow up on the treatment assessment. They got to engage in the treatment that's recommended, and only then, if they've done that for a significant amount of time, in this case 6 months, will the case get dismissed. If they fail, they essentially will come back and be sentenced on that, and then go through formal probation. And under that formal probation, we can require additional treatment as well.
So the people doing the counseling, if that's the right word, what's their requirement to communicate the progress on that person with the DA's office?
That will come through our program navigator and partner with them. And so they're obligated to provide that information to us. Now, quite frankly, if we find a provider that we don't think is providing us good information, we will stop providing them these clients through this process. So that's up on us to manage that, to make sure we're getting that kind of feedback.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Commissioner Savas.
Well, I appreciate having the update, and to me, it seems kind of early. I'll give you guys some space to sort this all out, but I do appreciate it. But I just want to recognize that as we're watching the media cover different jurisdictions, and, they're all different. Ours is different than others. I'm hoping that with the upcoming legislative session that's around the corner, that we can identify from a systems approach, what else do we need other than this legislation, right? We need capacity in what areas, our gaps are what for, and maybe there's a common denominator for all the counties that are implementing this for what the needs are, so we can message that, simply having a program and not having the capacity for treatment, for example, or jails, or whatever it may be, right? Whatever those impacts are. So not unlike just making changes for civil commitment, right? We need a whole bunch of beds. We need a whole bunch of facilities. There needs to be a systems approach. And unfortunately, I think some of us feel good that we passed some legislation, it's all fixed, when we have a long ways to go. So I just want to, at some point, when you think it's appropriate, I'd like to hear what our gaps are and what the system needs to make this program successful, not just here, but everywhere in the state.
So, in a nutshell, how does this program work? Now, you presented this wonderful chart because you guys are down in the weeds, and a lot of us, especially the media asking us questions, are up here. We have deflection. I think we know what that is. So what does conditional discharge mean?
So, Madam Chair, in Clackamas, this is a unique approach. It's a Clackamas County approach, to borrow a phrase I know that you've used in the past. And it's driven by our law enforcement partners. We're unique in the state that we're partnering with law enforcement and the DA's office. That's essentially the point of first contact. We have to have probable cause to believe someone has committed the crime of PCSU. If they do, they submit it to us. We being the DA's office, make a determination whether or not they're eligible for deflection, or step 2, which is that conditional discharge. Or step 3 is directly to getting convicted and going to formal probation. And so it is run through us to make sure that we're uniform throughout the county and that we're applying the appropriate resources in the circumstance. So it's a bit different than you may have heard what Portland's doing, even with what Washington County's doing, because of essentially the DA's office involvement. But the focus is, how do we bring together our burn resources, the Behavioral Health Resource Network, and our outreach, our homeless outreach teams for Love One, Father's Heart, 4D Recovery, those folks, together with the criminal justice system to do this. The centerpiece is a version of our community court program that we've used for homelessness. We're calling it Impact Court. And that's going to try to bring all these things together to have the same sort of success we had with homelessness under this population, which obviously has a lot of crossover.
So if a person is in deflection, can they go to conditional discharge?
If they fail deflection, yes. The next
If they
step,
fail deflection.
they would go to conditional
So
discharge.
deflection is really, if you want to get well, that would be the first route. But not all people have the desire
Correct.
to become healthy and well, correct?
Correct.
Because we have 7 in deflection and 13 in conditional discharge, and then we have 8 others out there with different charges, not in the program. Yeah, John.
Senate Bill 4002 is designed to provide the lightest touch that the system can possibly provide under the circumstances. So, for example, the reason you see a lot of people in conditional discharge versus deflection is that ideally, if the police come across a person who is using a controlled substance, and what they really just need is treatment and not a touch with the criminal justice system, that's what deflection's for.
Okay.
Unfortunately, as you might expect, what we're seeing are a lot of people who they're stealing, and that's how we learn that they're possessing drugs. Well, they're going to be in the criminal justice system anyway, right? So that's why they would end up in, say, a conditional discharge situation. They still have an opportunity to get the treatment that they would get under deflection, but now we have the added, what I'll call a disincentive, that they could go to jail. They could go to jail as a sanction if they continue to not abide by the conditions of the conditional discharge. And if that fails, they can end up with a conviction and on formal probation, where they have a probation officer monitoring their progress. Again, additional disincentive of jail if they are not complying with the conditions of the program. We are not naive enough to believe that everyone's going to go in and get treatment that they need. There are challenges, especially with substances as addictive as fentanyl. That's going to be challenging. Our goal is to get people the treatment. We don't want to fill our jail with people who are using drugs, but sometimes that's what's needed as let's take a step back, Let's get you away from the drugs long enough that you can start making some sound decisions and get you back into treatment. That's our goal. We want to treat people. You'll notice on this form there's a column for social referrals. Our ultimate goal is that if a person isn't disobeying the law at all, but they want treatment, we have an opportunity for that for them. We're trying to serve the community. So the lightest touch possible that we can have is what we're after.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Oh, I left over late.
Leftover light, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for this presentation. It's been very enlightening. We look forward to a return more on down the line when the program has a chance to really weed itself out. Any other commissioner questions?
I do have one more question, and that is, part of this whole program is the idea of a recovery center that we're looking at. And one of the issues on that is what should be the scope, size, capability of such a center. So in the next coming months, if you could kind of keep an eye on this and be able to tell us what you think the level of the need is for such a center so we can get it sized appropriately would be very helpful to us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Gary, what's next?
All right, I'm going to jump down to request for consent agenda for elected officials because the DA has this as well. So I'm jumping ahead here. Request for consent agenda under elected officials. Item 1, approval of a grant agreement with the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission for the Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Program. Amendment value is $585,598 for 1 year. Total agreement value is $1,060,853 for 1.5 years. Funding through the Oregon House Bill 4002. No county general funds are involved. Go ahead, District Attorney and team.
Thank you. So you'll recall that when we were having our challenges with the Impacts Committee grant review, the amount of money that we were expecting was under $1 million, so $950,000 or so. That's because not all the counties have entered into an agreement to do a deflection program. They've reallocated the money, and so now we're at $1.1 million, I believe. So there's a little bit more available than we thought we would have. Our goal, and Bill, if you want to speak more to this, Bill can share with you that what I agreed to do is to take a prosecutor off the line for that, because there was some consternation about that with the Impacts
Right.
Committee group, and put that towards more peer support, more opportunities to have folks work with the people on the front lines to serve people who are in need. So those are the differences that you'll see between our original grant proposal and what we're looking for right now.
Nothing.
Wonderful, we're getting more money.
Yeah.
It's amazing how things come out in the wash. Thank you. I see no objections to this moving forward.
Okay. Item 2, approval of a grant agreement with the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission for the Organized Retail Theft Program. Total agreement value is $50,000 for 1 year. Funding through the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. No county general funds are involved. This is also for the District Attorney's Office.
Thank you. I've asked Senior Deputy District Attorney Stacy Borgman, who runs our Property Crimes Unit, to be here if there's any more detailed questions that you might have. But about a year and a half ago, there was a work group formed that I was a part of to address Oregon's organized retail crime problem. And there was some consternation by our retailers with what was going on, especially in the Portland, formal Portland area, but Portland area generally. And so there's been money dedicated to this effort. And our ask is for $50,000 to do 3 things. One is that I'm trying to bring what I'll say a 21st century approach to how we present cases in the courtroom. So part of it is that we would receive iPads that have a program on it called TrialPad, which professionalizes our presentations. It digitally provides information to the judge and jury Our evidence is all done electronically. We don't have to do it with paper anymore. It'll automatically sort our exhibits. It'll automatically number our exhibits. We can put two documents at the same time up on the screen and in real time compare those two documents if we need to. From a property crime perspective, this is amazing because we can really use it to take complicated cases and simplify it for a judge or a jury so that they understand this bulk of information that we have. The second thing that we would do is provide signage to retailers who want it. Believe it or not, there are retailers who have chosen not to prosecute cases. They see that there's a liability there. Others want prosecution, and they want the public to know that they will do that. This will provide signage that says, hey, you're entering a store that the district attorney's office will prosecute if you steal from. They've done this effort in Washington County. The retailers love it. So this is something that we want to take on as well. And the third thing is we want training. So this money will provide training to our staff to ensure that we're doing the best practices in the moment with what's going on around the country. So those are the three things that we're going to use with the $50,000.
Wow, it's quite a lot. Questions or comments? Commissioner Scholl.
DA Wentworth, on the signage part, wouldn't the proprietor of the store be responsible for signage? in their store?
They will purchase them, yes.
Oh, they will purchase, okay, thank you.
Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you. I'll finish the request for consent for elected officials, so thank you, District Attorney. Next is the Sheriff's Office. Item 3, approval of an amendment to the annual operating plan with the United States Forest Service for patrol services. The amendment value is $69,212 for 1 year. Total agreement value is $134,185.08 for 4 years. Funding is through the United States Forest Service. No county general funds are involved. Nancy Artman, Finance Manager from the Sheriff's Office, and Captain Malcolm McDonald from the Sheriff's Office. Go ahead, please.
You go first. You got the Forest Service one.
Welcome, and please introduce yourselves.
Malcolm McDonald, Captain with the Sheriff's Office over parole and probation.
Good morning, Chair Smith. Nancy Artman, Finance Manager of the Sheriff's Office. Commissioners, good morning.
Welcome, and go ahead.
The first item before you today is an amendment to the cooperative agreement with the U.S. Forest Service. It is to conduct patrols on roads and campgrounds in the Zigzag and Clackamas River district areas. It pays for patrols for also special emergency situations, pardon me, to include drug enforcement, fire emergencies, and group gatherings.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, and the deputies assigned to this duty will also provide other law enforcement actions in those two different areas of the Mount Hood Forest. Is that right?
That's correct, Commissioner. Should they find anything else that requires attention, they will conduct those activities.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions or objections, thank you.
Item 4, approval of a personal services contract with Pathfinders of Oregon for Clackamas County Jail programming. Contract value is $250,381 for 1 year. Funding is through the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. No county general funds are involved.
Good morning, Commissioners. This funding in this contract is for services for our jail CSAP program. So where we're targeting individuals that have addiction, criminality. We select them and they want to participate in the program. We have a treatment block, so we are working with both men and women in the jail. This is also an opportunity for individuals that are eligible and meet the criteria to enter CSAP. They engage in treatment prior and then can transition to CSAP if they are eligible and meet that criteria. So we're looking forward to having these additional services and this additional programming for that program.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 5, approval to accept the organized retail theft grant from the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. Total grant value is $685,794 for 14 months. Funding is through the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. No county general funds are involved.
Welcome, please introduce yourself.
My name is Detective Mike Zacher from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, and I'm assigned to our Property Crimes Unit.
So if you recall, back in mid-June, Detective Zacher and I came forward to present the request to apply for these funds. So we are pleased to report that due to the collective effort led primarily by Detective Zacher, we received the $685,000, and we come before you today to request approval to receive those dollars.
Weehaw, very good work. Thank you, Detective.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Schultz?
Yeah, this $685,000 for 14 months. What do you estimate the savings to our Clackamas County retailers is due because of this program?
That's a good and complicated question because of my partnership with the retailers. I know that sometimes they underreport their losses to law enforcement, so it's hard to get an accurate grasp of just how much their loss is. But the funding that we're requesting in our is essentially overtime to conduct our retail crime missions, which if you see the results of those on our social media.
Yeah.
We take a lot of people into custody typically during the course of those missions. Sometimes the merchandise that's recovered is not necessarily commensurate to the dollars spent of those missions, but the missions are conducted twofold to provide support to the retailers, to let them know that law enforcement is supporting them due to their losses. But of the people that we take into custody, they're all vetted in that the purpose of that is to speak to them more, gather intelligence, identify the fencing operations or secondary markets where these individuals are selling those goods. So it's hard to put a number on just what exactly we're getting, but downstream, if we identified large-scale fencing operations, which we have through conducting these missions and spending this money, then we're looking at potentially savings or recoveries of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not into the millions, of dismantling fencing
Yeah,
operations.
we'll keep up the good work, because I know I've seen a lot of reports of results of your work, and you're taking those people off the street. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, so from a staffing standpoint, I think you mentioned overtime. I think you said that word.
Correct.
So are we just reallocating deputies or detectives? Just tell me a little bit about the staffing aspects of this.
So when we conduct these operations, we try to do so on overtime, so that way it's not a direct impact to our already challenged staffing levels. And so when we coordinate these missions, we do so through the request of overtime funding, in which we post lines from the sheriff's office where they can go. Detectives and patrol deputies can sign up for these missions to perform those, but also through the grant program, we're partnering with outside agencies. The Milwaukee Police Department has agreed to partner with us, which a portion of these overtime funds are obtained to support them, which we intend to reimburse through the application of a MOU, in addition to the Oregon Department of Justice. So we need help because these missions are large scale. They require a lot of resources in order to do this. But through that partnership and through the overtime, we're able to provide the resources to conduct these missions. That's a lot of what the overtime request is for. Not on straight duty time, because for folks who are on that straight time, they should be focusing on what their primary job responsibilities are at the sheriff's office and not these missions.
Okay, while I realize that these grants don't always, repeat or recurring, right? So this could be one-time funding. I'm just wondering if there is, let's just say a year from now, an opportunity and we get another grant to continue this, is it from a cost analysis perspective, would it be smarter to hire versus overtime? Because overtime is not dollar-wise that effective.
As far as hiring additional full-time employees, I can't speak to that other than what I've been able to ask for through the grant funding. I believe Nancy could speak to that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have the means to hire a full-time employee, although there's definitely justification for the work with current funding. So we would look to renew, should there be funds available through the program with CJC, and if not, unfortunately, we would have to cease the efforts for the time being.
Okay. Again, if you can, any information you can provide, I don't need it today, but I would certainly like to get an understanding of how much of this is going towards staffing, over time, all of it?
No, so what I've broken this down in the request for is that there's a portion that's devoted to overtime, and the overtime is devoted to the investigation of organized retail theft through the conducting of organized retail theft missions. And then there's a portion of that that's dedicated to equipment to further the investigative abilities when conducting investigations on fencing operations and all the different things that go into these large-scale investigations. And for these missions, We've been able to look at, based on what our experience has been thus far in conducting those missions, to see how many deputies, how many investigators and supervisors do we essentially need to effectively and smoothly and efficiently conduct these missions, because there are some instances where we've been kind of underprepared just based on the amount of theft activity that we've run into, where we've been kind of overrun. So we have developed scalable mission requirements, whether it's a small, medium, or large mission for certain types of places. So if we do a single or a small-scale mission, it doesn't require as many, potentially 4 deputies, an investigator, and a supervisor to manage taking folks into custody, managing the transports, dealing with evidence, ensuring the reports get completed, gathering all the nuts and bolts. But that's far different than if we try to coordinate a mission focusing on the Clackamas Town Center, because it's very labor-intensive just based on the size of the mission, the number of stores that are involved, the reality of how many people we're likely going to take into custody. And so that is a heavy lift, which by having the overtime funds available provided by the CJC to run those missions, that's crucial for the sheriff's office to have that additional funding to be able to support having that many people there to focus on that area at that time.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the effort. I support the effort to crack down on this, so you have our blessing.
Thank you.
Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Chair will go back to the regularly published agenda now. If you would please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Board.
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
This is a briefing on a public hearing you'll have this Thursday to discuss a supplemental budget resolution for fiscal year 2024-2025. Fiscal impact is a net increase of appropriations of $13,200,256. Funding is through beginning fund balance and transfers from other funds. No county general funds are involved. Kia Selly, the Director of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith and directors. My name is Kia Selly. I'm the Director of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. In June, the board approved the current fiscal year budget, and today I'm here to seek board approval of changes to that budget, a supplemental budget that is 10% over the adopted budget. So the effect of this resolution is an increase of $13.2 million in appropriations and a transfer of $95,000. There are 2 major drivers for these proposed budget changes. First is the use of system development charge funds from 2 additional SDC zones to fund the Concord property projects. Those are the park, the playground, and the community center renovations. The district has 3 SDC zones. Use of district-wide SDC zones or funds, is possible because the Concord property projects are considered district-wide assets in the capital improvement plan. Last June in 2023, the board approved the SDC capital improvement plan that included these Concord property assets. So additional system development charge funds will move to the capital fund in place of some of the general fund that is currently allocated to these projects. And this use of additional SDC funds frees up general fund revenue, which is more flexible and can be used for capital as well as operations. The second major driver is the timing of capital expenditures for the Concord property projects. So last fiscal year, we expected construction expenditures. There was a minor construction schedule delay, and so we actually are going to realize those construction expenditures in the current fiscal year. So we're moving that money. And then to a lesser degree, as I've mentioned before, whenever money is transferred from one fund to another, there's effectively like a double counting of those funds, and this is just an accounting thing. So there's a little bit of increase because of that as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just Kia, could you, when you say district-wide, love you to elaborate on this. Is this interchangeable with the word regional from a district perspective?
So I would more accurately use the term district-wide because really it's about the NCPRD district boundary. And so the idea is that the assets that are being constructed at the Concord property will serve all district residents and employees. Now, There are some district-wide assets in the capital improvement plan for this SDC program that probably do serve more as regional assets, but the term that is more commonly used is district-wide.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this will be a public hearing at this Thursday's business meeting. Chair, will you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
I will recess as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and convene as a Water Environment Services District.
You will also have a public hearing this Thursday on a proposed supplemental budget for Water Environment Services. This is a supplemental budget resolution for fiscal year 2024. 2025 fiscal impact is a net increase in appropriations of $2,980,585. Funding through Water Environment Services, sanitary sewer funds. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, directors. So this goes back to the Series 2021 revenue bonds that Wes took out back in 2021. Part of that was setting aside a premium of, I think, $8.8 million so that we could realize the lowest interest rate, which was 0.84%. So we've spent those funds down. Now we need to move some of those funds back over into our construction fund so we can build things. That's about it.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Again, you'll have a public hearing on this Thursday. Next is request for consent agenda for Water Environment Services. Item 1, approval of a resolution of necessity and purpose authorizing the acquisition of necessary easements by good faith negotiations, if possible, or condemnation, if necessary, for the South Welch's pump station upgrade. Total value is $1,200,000. Funding through Water Environment Services Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. No county general funds are involved.
So this is part of our multi-pump station upgrade project. This one was in front of you a week or two ago. Part of what we need to do there is get an easement and have a temporary construction easement. It's already a public easement, but when we did our homework, as we were looking to do this rehabilitation project, we realized it wasn't a WES easement. So we already accessed the property through this, and it shouldn't be a problem.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will recess as a Water Environment Services and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Next, returning to the request for consent agenda for the Board of County Commissioners, we've completed elected officials. Next is County Council. Item 1, approval of a board order adopting operating rules for the Board of County Commissioners. No fiscal impact. No county general funds are involved. Jane Veto, County Council. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. For the record, Jane Veto, County Council. The item before you today is the operating rules for the Board of County Commissioners. Board rules are intended to benefit the board by detailing operating procedures. These rules reflect the board's decisions and directions at the August 7th policy session.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 2, approval of a federal subrecipient grant agreement with the North Clackamas School District for capital repairs of the Wichita Center. Total agreement value is $1 million for 2 years. Funding is through county-approved ARPA funds. No county general funds are involved. Jeff Munns, Assistant County Counsel. Go ahead, please.
Thank you and good morning. As you know, this is the last piece in the 3 agreements to complete the sale of Wichita School from North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District to the North Clackamas School District. As part of that, the county agreed to support this ARPA grant agreement for $1 million for the upgrades necessary for the Wichita Center property.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
And the school district will be responsible for carrying out the repairs?
Correct.
Using this money?
That's correct.
Okay.
They
and so
already have contracts.
How close does this put us to closing?
This is the last agreement to be approved.
Okay.
And so then we'll be working on that, hopefully closing on Monday, the 30th.
Oh, good, thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. See no further comments.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, Technology Services. Item 1, approval of a contract amendment with the State of Oregon to add a dark fiber connection to the Gladstone Department of Motor Vehicles office. Total amendment value is $85,665 for 1 year. Funding through Clackamas Broadband Exchange Funds. No county general funds are involved. Lanu Parapilli, Director of Technology Services. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. This is a request for a contract amendment with State of Oregon excuse me, to add a fiber connection to the Gladstone DMV. The original contract is from 2013 with multiple amendments over the past decade. This contract will expire on June 30th, 2026. Total contract value is $85,665. Funding is through the CBX fund. No county general funds are involved.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of a contract with the City of Sandy for Clackamas Broadband Exchange storage space. Total contract value is $12,450 for 1 year. Funding through county-approved ARPA funds. No county general funds are involved.
This request is for the approval of a new contract with City of Sandy for a storage space. We are using the storage space to store fiber and other materials needed for the ARPA-funded CBX projects, expansion projects. This covers the cost for past fiscal year, which is FY 23-24, current fiscal year 25-25, and half of 25-26 fiscal year. Total contract value is $12,450. Funding is through the CBX Broadband ARPA Expansion Fund that the board already approved. No county general funds are involved.
So this is a temporary contract? Because it's ARPA funds, which are limited. ARPA funds are one-time spending. Is this storage facility going to be needed beyond the time this money runs out?
So this will end at the end of next year, next calendar year.
So this is temporary?
Yes,
For
it is.
construction purposes to store items?
Yes.
That was my question. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of a board order authorizing a purchase order to renew support service by Oracle America for PeopleSoft software. Total contract value is $614,175.29 for 1 year. Funding is through departmental cost allocations, which does include a small portion of county general funds.
This request is to renew our annual software support services contract with Oracle America. We use PeopleSoft systems for our financial and HR systems. The total contract value is $614,175.29. The funding is through department cost allocations. This is a 1-year contract.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Item 1, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with CODA Incorporated for opioid treatment in Clackamas County Jail. Agreement value is $200,000 for 2 years. Funding is through the opioid settlement funds. No county general funds are involved. Denise Swanson, Deputy Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. So as you recall, during the June policy session, the BCC approved $1 million in opioid settlement funding for 6 community-based organizations through our NOFO process. This one addresses opioid use disorder in correctional facilities. The situation for incarcerated individuals is critical. Nearly 2/3 have a substance use disorder, and their overdose risk increases tenfold upon release. This project aims to support individuals' successful transition back into the community, improving their quality of life through education, employment, housing, and overall health, thereby reducing their risk of recidivism or relapse. So CODA is going to implement a centralized medication model at the Clackamas County Jail and integrated services for opioid use disorder. This initiative will expand access to care, thus improving health outcomes for those in the justice system.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Lake Oswego for ambulance services. The amendment value is $44,235.84 for 1 year. Total contract value is increased to $379,388.64 for 12 years. Funding is through American Medical Response Northwest. No county general funds are involved.
So each year, the county updates its IGAs with the City of Lake Oswego, Clackamas Fire District Number 1, and Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue Consortium to ensure rapid response to 911 medical calls, enhancing the effectiveness of our EMS system and supporting our ambulance service plan. So you'll recall a couple weeks ago, you basically approved the same agreement with the Clackamas Fire District Number 1. So this is explicitly focused on paramedic first response and does not pertain to ambulance transport subcontracts. Last year, Commissioner West was asking about how extending response times could improve care in emergencies, and the goal is to enhance overall efficiency by ensuring that Lake Oswego Fire Department quickly deploys paramedics, allowing AMR to optimize their arrival time. The integrated software system facilitates real-time coordination, ensuring paramedics reach the scene swiftly and effectively. And research highlights that the speed of the first paramedic's arrival significantly impacts patient outcomes, often more than the ambulance response times.
Interesting. I would agree with that, by the way. So if you think you're having a heart attack, it's best not to have your friend take you. You should call the ambulance. Just saying. Seeing no objections to this.
Item 3, approval of an amendment to a provider agreement with Care Oregon for behavioral health services. The amendment value is $1,416,250 for 6 months. Total agreement value is increased to $7,253,146 for 1 year. Funding through the Oregon Health Plan. No county general funds are involved.
So this amendment provides additional funding for wraparound services, a voluntary care planning process that supports eligible youth and their families, empowering them to achieve positive outcomes and fostering brighter futures. It also funds a jail coordination pilot project for Care Oregon members who are incarcerated and have behavioral health or substance use challenges. The agreement overall, so this is an amendment to the big agreement, supports our behavioral health crisis and safety net services, including the crisis walk-in clinic, our mobile crisis teams, our 24-hour crisis hotline, and our health promotion services.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Thank you. Next, disaster management. Item 1, approval of a grant application for the Federal Emergency Management Agency Building Resilient Infrastructure for Communities program. Total grant value is $50 million. Funding through a federal grant with $12,500,000 in matching funds from Portland General Electric. No county general funds are involved. Daniel Neibauer, Disaster Management Director. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. This will look familiar because we have come before you a few other times in 2021, 2022, and 2023 to apply for this grant in partnership with PGE to do some undergrounding of the lines up the Mount Hood corridor. We have always been supported by the state and by FEMA and say that they like this project. However, we have not been awarded this project. So we are asking permission to work with PGE and apply again for a 4th year. We have gotten some feedback from FEMA that we incorporate every year, and we also have events that we can incorporate. So last year we incorporated the Camp Creek incident and used that to reevaluate, and this year we'll use the January 2021 storm and use that as further justification toward FEMA and hope for a better outcome.
So PGE has been applying for this for 4 years, and every year FEMA says, "God, we love your program," but we don't get approval, and then they keep moving the goalposts, is how I read this. Oh, you need more. Oh, you need more for something that doesn't exist yet. And so I support PGE in this. Is PGE paying for staff time for these applications?
They're not paying for staff time. We don't have that as part of our agreement with them, but our staff time is much lower. PGE does all the work on the application, and we have about 20 hours worth of review of the application and then pushing the submit button.
Do you ever think FEMA's going to let loose of these funds?
I don't know. There have been a couple of the $50 million awarded, not many, but there have been some, so there is precedent that they do award up to their limit. But I can't say either way.
Will they possibly give less than what the application is?
I don't know, and that's something we can certainly look at, seeing if there'd be more favorable to try that.
Well, I mean, they applied for 50 million. So does FEMA say no to 50 million even though they might have 40 million available? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking process. I just don't know.
Yeah, then that's a great question. And I don't know. I think that they award their full amount every year that they're allotted to it, so they don't have any in reserve.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval to allow repurchase of a property parcel by Jim Nagay for $1,202.72, funding through the purchaser. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. We've discussed this particular property and the next property up for consideration in executive session. Essentially, we have a request on this particular property by the past owner to reacquire it, and they would be reacquiring it for the cost of the delinquent taxes, penalties, interest, and DTD property management fee. Essentially, Mr. Nagy's family formerly owned the property, and he has requested it to purchase it back. He has made the payment. The payment was $1,202.72. Essentially, we're looking for board authorization to complete the transaction.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objection.
Item 2, approval to allow purchase of a property parcel by Ed Edner and Elizabeth Brandon for $371.04. Funding is through the purchaser. No county general funds are involved.
This is an amazing piece of property, 435 square feet in total. Essentially, Mr. Enner and Miss Brandon, husband and wife, have requested from the Board of County Commissioners to buy this piece of property back. Essentially, it is a small triangle abutting their piece of property that went into foreclosure. That cost or that acquisition price represents the cost of delinquent taxes, penalties, interest, and property disposition management fees. Just to give you some, the property is about 435 square feet in size. Currently has an assessed value right now of about $800, give or take. So it kind of gives you some comparisons to the buyback cost.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of a resolution declaring the public necessity and for acquisition of right-of-way easements and fee property and authorizing good faith negotiations and potential condemnation actions for the site distance improvements at the Canby-Markham Highway and Gribble Road project. Total value is $50,000. Funding through road funds. No county general funds are involved.
You are very familiar with these. We do these prior to any capital project that we're looking to do for our road system. Essentially, the approval of this resolution allows our right-of-way agents to go forward and have good faith negotiations with anybody who may be impacted or we may have to acquire property from. There is no condemnation action that is approved through the approval of this resolution. If and when we cannot reach a settlement with a property owner, and if condemnation is necessary, we would bring that forward to the Board of County Commissioners to discuss further before any action were taken.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Thank you. Next, Finance Department. Item 1, approval of a public improvement contract with A.C. Schomer and Sons for the Clackamas County Stabilization Center. Total contract value is $1,632,992 for 1 year. Funding is a direct allocation from State House Bill 5204 through the Oregon Department of Administrative Services. No county general funds are involved. Patrick Williams, Deputy Director of the Finance Department. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. The Facilities Work Group has been working with H3S and other stakeholders for the last several months to develop specifications and find a suitable contractor to transform and remodel the former Women's Center building in Milwaukee to the new Clackamas County Crisis Stabilization Center. We are here today, or I'm here today, to request approval of a public improvement contract with A.C. Schomer and Sons for $1,632,992 to fund this remodel. The contract was competitively bid, and the county received 7 responses. The contract covers just about everything to help ensure the new building will meet the county's needs, except for constructing the technology infrastructure, which will be done in partnership with Technology Services. And I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Juvenile Department. Item 1, approval to accept the congressionally recommended awards approved to fund Clackamas School-Based Behavioral Health and Substance Abuse Juvenile Justice Prevention Program. Total award value is $500,000 for 2 years. Funding is through the United States Department of Justice. No county general funds are involved. Christina McMahon, Director of the Juvenile Department. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith. Good morning, Commissioners. I am here to ask you for your approval to put this item on the consent agenda for this Thursday's business meeting, specifically accepting, as Gary said, the congressionally directed spending appropriation. As you know, we started talking about this in the early winter of 2023, and we've gone through a lengthy process to meet all the requirements. We were told we would be getting it, but we needed to then fill out all of basically a grant application. So that's all been done, and we've received the notice of award, and we are very excited about having this money to continue the good work that we've been doing out in Gladstone School District. When we applied, we asked to get this earmarked so that we could continue it and expand it to the middle school, and hopefully be able to expand it to another school district in Clackamas County. And we believe with this funding, we will be able to do that, and our intention is to hopefully identify that school this fall and begin that work in January. So with all that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but ask for your approval to get this on the consent agenda.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you. Those are the requests for consent agenda. These will all be on this Thursday's business meeting for your final action. Next, a briefing on a public hearing as well related to the budget. This is for the county budget, a supplemental budget resolution for fiscal year 2024. 2025 fiscal impact is a net increase in appropriations of $8,752,458. Funding is through beginning fund balance, charges for services, federal, state, local funding, and other revenue sources. No county general funds are involved. Patrick Williams, Deputy Director of the Finance Department, will brief you. Go ahead.
Thanks again. There's 10 items here to contemplate. District Attorney is recognizing state operating grant revenue and increasing special payments by $140,000. Dog Services Charitable Fund program was created as a result of the dissolution of the Clackamas Dogs Foundation. This item creates the FY25 budget for $525,000 spending authority in the new program. The County School Fund is reducing special payments and increasing operating expenses to create authority for administrative fees. There's no net impact there. The Community Services Fund is reducing operating expenses while increasing contingency. Once again, no impact. To move two positions, or no dollar impact, excuse me, to move two positions to the Road Fund, and is also recognizing additional charges for services and state gas tax revenues totaling $300,000. The Library Network Fund is shifting budget authority from contingency to operating expenses for the addition of two positions. Once again, there's a $0 net impact. The Special Grants Fund is recognizing ARPA Section 605 and opioid settlement revenues while increasing operating expenses and special payments totaling $2.4 million for the completion of eligible projects. H3S lines of business are recognizing additional federal and state grant revenue, reducing contingency and increasing operating expenses totaling $4 million. The Technology Services Fund is recognizing beginning fund balance, increasing operating expenses to complete projects, and increasing contingency totaling $1.3 million. And finally, the Risk Management Claims Fund is reducing contingency and increasing operating expenses to fund a workplace violence prevention coordinator position, and there's a $0 net impact.
Any questions or comments on this? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you. And again, you'll have a public hearing this Thursday to discuss this further. Next, review of your board business meeting agenda for this Thursday, September 26, 2024. You will have a presentation from the Clackamas County Clerk McMullen on an elections update for the November 2024 election. You'll have 3 public hearings on supplemental budgets, which you heard of today, for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, for Water Environment Services, and for Clackamas County. And you'll have all the consent items you discussed today and your normal course of business. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know, and staff and I will answer it for you before Thursday. Next, advisory board and commission appointments. Andrew, go ahead, please.
Commissioners, the Tourism Development Council currently has 5 openings on their commission due to term expirations and 1 resignation. 9 total members are allowed, serving a maximum of 2 3-year terms. Recruitment opened to the public on September 27, 2023, and closed on December 10, 2023, and reopened December 14, 2023, closing January 5, 2024. Through this process, 2 applications were received, and both are recommended for appointment. The recommendations are Mike Quinn and Brian Crow, both for first full terms. The board could select other candidates or require further recruitment. Madam Chair.
Questions or comments, commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval of the Tourism Development Council recommendations, Mike Quinn and Brian Crow.
Second.
Commissioner Scholl has moved the approval of the Tourism Development Council of Mike Quinn and Brian Crow. Commissioner Savas has seconded the motion. So we still have 2 vacancies on the Tourism Board. Is that correct? Did I understand that right?
We will have 3, Madam Chair.
We have
total
3 vacancies
Yes, ma'am.
after this appointment.
Yes, there is a total of 9 members, and as of right now, there are 5 openings, so there are 4 active members. With the addition of these 2, there will then be 6 members, leaving 3 possible open slots on the 9-person commission.
Are we actively recruiting for this?
I would be happy to find that out for you, Chair.
Yes, they are. They are, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Seeing no further questions, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much.
Next, Commissioner Shull would like to give an update on an MPAC agenda item and seek board direction on that item.
Go ahead, Commissioner Scholl.
Okay, so tomorrow evening, MPAC meets, and one of the action items will be a vote regarding the urban growth management process. Sherwood, the city of Sherwood has requested expansion of the urban growth boundary, and the city of Sherwood was the only city to request an expansion of their UGB. So tomorrow night, I'll vote with MPAC on this. And as you may recall, in August, the board submitted a letter regarding this, and the staff submitted a letter of technical concerns. One of the topics the board letter raised was a concern for the methodology for determining industrial lands. The letter called it out as being flawed because it doesn't consider site criteria factors in developing the buildable lands inventory. So tomorrow night, I'd like to vote yes on the UGB expansion for Sherwood, but with a requirement of Metro to, quote, agree to create and host or having senior staff participate in a task force ending no later than mid-2025 with a report back to the council highlighting opportunities for creating growth and capacity models that are more reflective of market realities. The goal will be to work with local jurisdictions and private sector partners to address the employment lands challenges identified through the urban growth report process, including but not limited to slope and lot size. And then I will ask also that there be no more additional conditions that substantially restrict these lands beyond what is required by the state law. So tomorrow night, if it's okay, I'll vote yes on that UGB expansion, and I'll state the condition that comes with our yes vote, as I just read here a moment ago.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas?
So, thank you, Commissioner Scholl. As I understand it, you're going to make an amendment to the motion, essentially?
Yes, I think that's what
Okay.
staff recommends.
Okay. And do you think we have some regional support around the table to support that amendment?
I cannot answer that question right now.
Okay.
I know the staff has been working with their staff counterparts around the region, but I'm not sure what the sentiment will be at the meeting tomorrow night.
And then, if I heard you correctly, you mentioned use that information to send to the council, not the MPAC committee, but the Metro Council. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And lastly, is there any likelihood that before or after the Metro Council makes a decision that they might also include or take lands elsewhere like they did last round?
Well, I don't know. I have not heard any indications about that, but, we're dealing with Metro, and surprises are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, I mean, to support it, I would just have the condition that they don't, come back and say, oh, by the way, for X amount of acres here, we're going to take it from Clackamas County once again. So that's, I know that's not part of the understanding, but I just don't know if going
Yeah,
forward,
okay.
it's an option.
I'll
for
keep
the
an eye
Metro
on
Council.
that. I don't think that's going to be a problem this year because we're in the part of the cycle that would not require impact or a Metro to do a one-for-one exchange. Correct, Dan
Thank
Johnson?
you so much. Yeah, Commissioner Stoll did a great summary of the issues we're facing, but to answer some of the questions that came up, the condition that Commissioner Stoll referenced actually came up as a part of the discussion with the technical committee, and actually it's already being brought forward, and there appears to be support for it, just to answer that question. Secondly, there was our ears have been perked since the last UGB discussion, and there is no swap considered. If you remember the last discussion they had about an adjustment, there was swap where there was reduction of our lands. That is not, the chief operating officer for Metro, the recommendation does not include that. It's basically, they are showing the fact that there's support to add these new lands into the UGB.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's too bad. Good try. Commissioner Scholl, I give you just all of my support as much as I can just push you over the finish line. If I could vote additionally, I would.
And there's one more thing that might come up on the impact agenda tomorrow night. That has to do with the Metro Regional System Facilities Plan. And there's been some concern among staff that they're fast-tracking a decision on that. And so tomorrow night, if we get to that topic on the agenda, I will ask that Metro hold off on any final decision on the facilities plan until such time as the new Regional Waste Advisory Council is stood up. It's going to include elected people also in the region. So again, I'll mention that. And then also regarding the plan itself, our staff has not been able to look at it yet, so we're not really sure what it includes, so I'll bring that up also.
Yeah, Paul.
I mean, I would assume and I would support reasonable access, or not access, but process in this case, and make sure that we can all review what's done. If it's regional, we're affected by the very nature of it. So therefore, I think we ought to have there ought to be a regional process in which not only do our staff get an opportunity to look at it, but the public and ourselves as electeds.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we offer our support. Gary, is that all that's needed for Commissioner Scholl today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Final item today, Chair, is Commissioner Communications.
Great. I'm going to call on Commissioner Scholl. I understand you have an appointment you need to attend to later.
Yeah, I do, and, Chair Smith, I don't have any things to pass along.
Okay.
It's been, a lot of things going on, but I don't have anything to share on Commissioner comments this morning.
Good. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I don't have too much. Just to inform you that on Saturday, I participated in a panel before the Lake Oswego surrounding area, including Stafford, neighborhood chairs and Hamlet and associated citizen groups who hosted this event at the Park Academy in Lake Oswego. The topics ranged a little bit was Stafford, a little bit was infrastructure, a little bit was housing, state mandates and so forth. And I really, up until I read the article this morning on at least the takeaway from the reporter, who I don't know the reporter as of yet, but I really tried to have a neutral approach on the Stafford, and I verbally recognized and stated that the cities ultimately have, by their three-party agreement, are ultimately in control of that, and that the tensions of uncertainty are, at the forefront of my mind, not necessarily the commission. I kind of separated what my thoughts were, but and I even brought up Tom McCall a couple times, understanding that the infrastructure costs in that area and in the region and the state mandates for housing and, going vertical and having land available, there's this tug, push and pull. But anyhow, I just want to, alert you that I did my best to be neutral, and yet it seemed as though the way the article was written, not a big deal. I'm not going to raise any issue with the media, but kind of painted as though that I wanted to have some decision certain, and that's not what I meant to say. If I did misspeak, I will adjust that accordingly. But I thought it went really well, and Representative Daniel Nguyen and Mayor Buck and myself were the three panelists. I thought we did a pretty good job of identifying some of the state mandates and how that has really taken away some of the autonomy, and that if the state government wishes to build a lot more housing and fund that, they should really assist and look at the lack of infrastructure monies, transportation, water, all of it, you name it. I should have or could have, if I had the opportunity, to talk about maybe there ought to be localized, no one wants to hear this, but, localized restrictions on development until the infrastructure's in place. I don't see the value, and this is where transit comes in. I mean, Councilor Sherman from Happy Valley has laid an example in which they, by virtue of the higher density zoning, they've built some of this high density zoning, very little parking. They can't sell it because there's no transit. There's no reasonable means for people to own it and then be able to commute or park a car. And we talked about that at length as well. So that's my update there tonight. There will be another open house for the Sunrise Project, kind of more talking to the public right now, at Adrian Nelson High School in Happy Valley. I believe it starts at 5 o'clock. I encourage people that are interested in this project this visionary project to opine and give their input. And Thursday, I will not be at the business meeting. I'll be attending with the Joint Committee on Transportation a full-day event, 3 different events going on with regard to their tour that they're in around the state. On Thursday, it'll be in Happy Valley primarily. There'll be a tour in the morning, a round table in the afternoon. In the evening, Commissioner West will be speaking and giving his thoughts to the public discussion session. So it'll be a busy transportation week, and upcoming soon will be the R1 Act and all the other things we're doing, but that's my update for today.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, there could be as early today a decision on Metro's attempt to lower the SHS tax and change the governance model. They're in a work session right now, and I believe they might be meeting on Thursday for a final vote. Metro has also reached out to the Portland Metro Chamber, who supports a 30% tax reduction in the overall tax. They've also met together, Portland Metro Chamber last week on a meeting, and then they had another follow-up with that. So there's internal, external organizations who are negotiating this. I'm not sure how public those meetings are since I was not in attendance, but I've been talking with the other 2 chairs of the counties and Lynn Peterson, trying to offer my input. And you talk about, Paul, you mentioned earlier, gee, where's the information? And I almost interrupted you and said, oh, I have more. I don't know what it's going to be. I have not seen the plan. I have offered input on, if you change the governance model, don't take away the county's autonomy. We provide the services. All the same points that we have made throughout time on this. I don't think I've outstepped my boundaries on this board's representation of what was going to be. I'm not sure exactly how big the cut could be, although if it's a full 30%, it would mean a $15 million reduction in the allocation we would receive for SHS dollars. However, it probably won't take effect for a couple years. So an interesting fact about how taxes work, when they implemented this tax, it took a year to collect this tax, remember? And we were criticized because we didn't use our own funds. We waited for the tax collections. Likewise, if we reduce this tax, it'll take a year for people to see it on their tax bills of a reduction. Metro has also offered up to backfill in the beginning years of this tax reduction some monies that evidently they have set aside to offset any program cuts or programs that we couldn't do. So it's just up in the air right now on what's going to happen with that. Stay tuned. We should probably, I'm hoping we hear something by tomorrow or maybe even Thursday on this. Commissioner Savas.
I'm a little surprised to hear that. Partly, and I don't know if there's any association. I mean, at JPAC on Thursday, there was an effort to fast-track some RFFA decisions, RFFA, Regional Flexible Funds, and now I'm hearing Commissioner Schulz saying that they want to fast-track a decision at MPAC, and now I'm hearing another fast-tracking, and I'm also hearing the fast-tracking on the regional thing. Wow, what's going on? But did we not send a letter from this board to the chair or the president of Metro Council, and she not acknowledge back that, yes, there will be a regional roundtable discussion on this, and yet we're making a decision? I don't see alignment or any consistency in that. I thought that we would have the discussion prior to them making any kind of a decision. So I don't know what to do. I don't know how to respond to that, other than to say I'm in shock. And I feel, again, process is being foregone or forestalled, and we're finding ourselves with another big surprise.
I don't disagree with that, Commissioner Savas. There had been one meeting with the Metro president and the three chairs, of which we all basically said what you're saying. You know, what is it that we're trying to fix? What is the problem? That really has not been identified, except for the fact that they want to see a tax reduction. I think this is also coming from the governor. The governor says, we really need to cut back on our increased taxes. And I'm thinking, well, then quit passing these taxes in the legislature, Governor. You signed the bills, signature on that. So what are they doing? They're impacting the local jurisdiction's ability to provide the services that the state has mandated, yet they're taking away our ability to provide the services that the state has mandated. So there's a lot of moving balls in this. I can't speak to any of your concerns because I don't know. And as soon as the information comes out, commissioners, you'll be notified. So that's all I have for my update today. Seeing no further business before this commission, we are adjourned.